Hello to all. I'm Dave Wardle, Chief Operating Officer at Global Partner Solutions. Firstly, I'd like to thank all attendees in the audience, panelists, and our internal crew who organized this event. It gives us all a much better insight into what our associations have all been going through this past year, whether it be the OAC, Aero Montreal, AIA, and others. Thanks to each of them for their virtual trailblazing and as well their support. A couple of administrative housekeeping things. All people attending will be muted, except the panelists speaking at the time, of course. If there's one thing we've learned through this past year, the courier will always come when you're on a call, and that generally sets up a chain of events, starting with the doorbell, the dog barking, the door chimes, if you have a security system. As well, there is a Q&A text box on the screen for all participants to ask questions to. Make it easier for us if you could please indicate which panelist you would like to address the questions to. That would be great. The Q&A session will take place after all presenters have spoken. We will try to get as many questions answered as possible, but can't guarantee they all will be today. If we run short of time, the majority of questions will all get answered and posted on our LinkedIn account over the next few days. I would like to note that the event is being recorded and will be available 24 to 48 hours from now on our website, and a link will be sent to all participants. That leads us to a brief feedback survey also, which we'd most appreciate you submitting. This is a first for Global Partner Solutions, first of a series, we hope. We've done our best to prepare and hope to keep any glitches to a minimum. Please excuse any minor moments if we suffer any. When we first thought about organizing something like this, we felt it important to bring in a real cross-section of industry folks, some of which a lot of us don't interact with on a regular basis, just to get their perspective and have more of a full spectrum discussion and overview on how they have managed their way through this past year and what their business and company may be looking like as we emerge from this. For us as a business at Global Partner Solutions, we have suffered along with most. We've had contractor-supported projects all over the world reduced or canceled, with limited access to manufacturing sites of our customers, strict and varied COVID protocol procedures, which our agents in the field have had to adhere to, and so on. The good news is, as we are now turning the corner and number of cases begins to level and decline in most areas and vaccines are distributed, we are starting to experience a definite uptick in customer requests for services. Thank goodness. Whether it be supply chain support, engineering needs, cybersecurity auditing, and others, it's all been very welcome after the most trying year of most of our lives. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Gus Bateas as our first panelist. Gus is currently the Triumph Corporate Vice President of Site and Supply Chain, where he has developed and leads the Shared Services Strategic Organization. Throughout his career, he has held various aerospace and defense technical, business, and operations positions at UTC Aerospace, Goodrich, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing Rockwell. Gus, without further ado, over to you.
Thank you, David. Welcome, everybody. And I'm here to talk about the COVID effects of on the aerospace industry supply chain. Can we go to the first page, please? The three areas I'm going to talk about today are forecast changes and challenges that we're all living with in the last 12 months. The supplier challenges, and of course, the supply chain risk and resilience. Next page, please. So in the last 12 months, specifically around commercial aerospace, we've seen a decline in air travel, as we've all experienced ourselves, decline in airline demand, decline in the primes, Boeing, Airbus, and others, and therefore aircraft deliveries to the airlines. These declines in demand and forecasts obviously need to be flowed down to all of us in the aerospace manufacturing area, and then we need to then manage those forecast changes and manage the inventory associated with it. The next 12 months, specifically around commercial aerospace, we anticipate fewer changes to that forecast as the economy and the airline industry starts to recover. A flat to potentially slight increase in volumes, depending on which sector within the commercial aerospace industry you may be dealing with. And then also managing that risk, suppliers, demand, and then global sourcing strategies. Next page, please. So what are some of these challenges? What we're seeing is trying to keep up with the forecast demands from our customers, and then also managing those forecasts down into the supply chain. So as we all imagine, a little change in our customers' forecast creates massive change throughout our supply chain. Of course, we're seeing, decreasing demands, and that leads to us trying to manage, and our suppliers trying to manage inventory. When it's kind of like turning a ship around in the middle of the ocean, it's not that easy to get everything to stop and prevent any kind of inventory growth in our finances, and of course in our factories. The other challenges that we have are around employees, and also getting COVID, or dealing with COVID with a family member, and having employees not come to work for those exact reasons. So shop manufacturing planning has also become another major challenge that we're all dealing with. Those changes in the supply base, and trying to manage those demand changes and dealing with COVID also creates a larger need for delivery assurance. So although the demand forecasts are going down, it's offset by not having employees to go deliver product on the demand that we do have. So that creates a need in the supply base to go ensure that we're getting products when they need to show up. Financial stress, the inventory burden and the declining forecasts. We all can imagine that we're buying raw material. We've got product within work in progress and WIP, and then we also have finished product on the shelf. So when we turn off the forecast demand, you're now putting a bit of financial stress throughout the supply chain. Which suppliers will be there post-COVID? We're kind of looking at some of the smaller shops run by the father, and then the family decides not to carry that forward, and COVID has now just kind of accelerated the father or the mother or the owner's position to retire early. So which ones will be there post-COVID is also an area that we're all dealing with. And then of course we've got the continuing supplier mergers and consolidation that we typically deal with, whether COVID was there or not. But the fact that demands are going down and suppliers are at financial risk, that sort of accelerates in some areas where some potential mergers and consolidations. And then of course, looking into our crystal ball and trying to see how we better prepare ourselves for the next 12 to 24 months as the industry starts to recover. Next page, please. So how do we mitigate all this? What are the major things that we're trying to do to put some risk and resilience within the supply base? Mitigating and not necessarily eliminating risk, but what are the things that we're going to try to do to look over the horizon to make sure that we have an assurance of supply. So what we like to call continuous and relentless actions around delivery assurance and supplier development. Where do we see those risky suppliers? Where do we need to go do supplier development to make sure we're going to have, there we go, make sure we're going to have a source of supply down the road when we do need the parts and when the forecast numbers start going up. Things that we were doing pre-COVID, during COVID, and of course post-COVID is continuing monitoring, financial stress of suppliers through, D&Bs and other indicators that are out there. Some of them are really rear view mirror type actions where, our suppliers pay and their suppliers on time, and where is there financial risk with some suppliers so we can go put mitigating actions in place. All in all, having some data-driven decisions and actions. Look at supplier delivery, look at quality and performance trends, understand why a supplier is not delivering on time. How do we ensure and how do we prop up some of these suppliers to help deliver product on time? What can we do as a customer to support them? Continuing to monitor the capability and capacity as the industry is changing, suppliers are changing in terms of what their capabilities are. From a capacity perspective, as I mentioned earlier, where some of the harder hit areas of COVID, they may have some reduced capacity. Was that temporary, or is that a longer term action that we need to go monitor? And again, of course, as the forecasts come back, we need to make sure that there's capacity in the supply base to support us. All of these having some robust supply chain strategies, reevaluating low cost sourcing and what products we want to put in low cost regions. We all saw the impacts of the transportation and logistics. Moving product from one state to another in the U.S. Was a bit easier in some regards than trying to get product across the globe. So having that robust supply chain strategy and understanding what items, dual sourcing, where you have the luxury of dual sourcing, and making sure, again, having that risk and resilience in your supply chain. And of course, continue to monitor and adjust your actions. The actions you put in today may not necessarily be the priority actions you need for tomorrow. So planning for and managing that risk along the entire supply chain. And I believe that's my last slide. So thank you, Trent. Back over to you.
Thanks so much, Gus. As I said before, please feel free to enter questions in the Q&A box, and we look forward to more from Gus and others during the Q&A session after all the speakers are through their presentations. Our next speaker is Kelly Lish. Kelly is the Senior Manager for Globalization and Enterprise Supplier Development for Boeing. In this role, she is responsible for preparing current and potential Boeing suppliers for success through global engagements, streamlined onboarding processes, supplier training and mentoring, special projects, and strategic alignment to company sourcing strategies. She is also responsible for coordination and collaboration of all industrial participation and strategic work placement agreements. Kelly, I will hand it over to you. Please make sure you're unmuted, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dave. And hello, everybody. I am really excited to be able to participate on this panel today. I know that we would all prefer to be at this event in person, and honestly, you'd be able to see my face while I'm talking instead of this stationary picture. I do see us doing more of these virtual events and maybe hybrid events as well over the next few years. But with that said, I just really wanted to start off first with just thanking Global Partner Solutions for bringing us all together for this panel discussion. I think it's really important for all of us to continue to connect and talk, especially as we move through this COVID-19 environment. So again, thank you so much for putting this together. I only have one slide to share with you today, but before I get to that slide, I would like to take a few moments to share just a little bit more about my role in the company. As Dave mentioned, we do prepare current and potential suppliers through global engagements, streamlined onboarding and supplier training and mentoring. We also take a very strong effort to connect to the strategy and sourcing teams within our company. Looking at all of that, we partner actually across all of the Boeing business units in commercial, defense, services, non-production, and engineering. And I do have a team that is located across the globe best to support our supply chain and also the growing needs of our business and current environment. During COVID-19, our team has actually really increased efforts in virtual training events and helping suppliers to really navigate through Boeing, especially through all of our own internal changes. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. I'd like to just share with you our priorities. And these are our 7 priorities for our company. I'm going to actually walk you through each one of these and really share how we're doing in each one of these areas and how it connects to the actual supply chain. So the first one that you're seeing is safely operate in COVID-19 global environment. So we're taking lots of measures to keep our factories, our employees, and our suppliers safe. We've taken measures across our facilities, including requiring face coverings, enhancing our facility cleaning, and adding visual indicators. We've also taken this time to focus on improving our own processes, concentrating on our safety measures and partnering with our supply chain. We expect the majority of our efforts will result in lasting changes that will enable us to be more efficient in the long term and lay that foundation for recovery when the market continues to recover. From a market and environment standpoint, we project it will take about 3 years to return to 2019 levels, and it will be a few years beyond that for the industry to return to long-term trend growth. With that said, the fundamentals that have driven air travel for the past 5 decades and doubled air traffic over the past 2 decades still remain intact, and this is a strong and resilient market. In the short term, though, the industry will be challenged. But long term, we have a backlog of more than 4,000 commercial airplanes, and we're forecasting strong demand for 40,000 new airplanes over the next 20 years. And we are seeing strong success in our defense and space markets. For now, we've had to adjust our production rates to reflect airline activity, but at some point, we will need to ramp up this production quickly. And to support this, we will need a very well-prepared supply chain. The second item on here is safely return the 737 to service globally. This is our primary focus. This includes following the lead of our regulators and working with them to ensure they're satisfied completely with our airplane and our work so that we can continue to meet our customer commitments. We're also partnering with our suppliers to ensure they're up to date on all recent progress and are prepared for production changes. The next item is rebuild trust. We know that many of our stakeholders are rightly disappointed in us, and it's our job to repair these vital relationships. We will listen, seek feedback, and respond appropriately, urgently, and respectfully. Communication and transparency are the key here. Next is focusing on our values. This is about fostering an inclusive environment that embraces oversight and accountability and puts safety, quality, and integrity above all else. The next item is operate with excellence. Operational excellence is how we work together to deliver safe products and services to our customers while also continuously improving our quality. We just recently rolled out to our suppliers the Boeing supply chain principles. These principles are expectations we have of our suppliers and of ourselves. Let me just quickly walk you through all 5 of those principles. The first one is on safety and quality in everything we do. The second is focused on relationships. The third is about transparent communication. The fourth is focused on delivery performance as a fundamental. And the fifth is about sustainable, continuous value creation. All of these principles together mean we collaboratively design quality and safety into all our products and services. We commit time and resources to our healthy relationships of all of our stakeholders. Communication is based on honesty and integrity. Parts and services are delivered on time, every time, and we focus on continuous value creation. The next item is restoring our production health. While the reality for all of us through COVID-19 continues to evolve and affect every part of our cultures, our public health, socialization, and economy, we're taking this time to invest in our future supply chain knowledge, improve our own processes, increase efficiencies, and focus on the future. We'll keep taking steps to restore our supply chain and workforce expertise so we're ready to restart our production and increase rates safely with the highest standard of quality. Boeing continues to partner with our suppliers to help manage issues and risks to ensure supply chain health and stability as we look to increase production rates. This is a difficult time for all of us in the industry, and we recognize the challenges the global pandemic poses for all of our suppliers, in particular some of our small and medium-sized companies. We're committed to working with our suppliers to navigate the current business environment and also provide guidance and assistance where we can ensure a stable and healthy supply chain. And lastly, investing in our future. Our markets are growing, the customer demand is evolving, and the competition is increasing, and technology is advancing at a pace we've never seen before. Boeing must keep innovating to succeed. We'll continue to invest in our global workforce, and the new processes and technologies will help us become safer and more efficient as we define the future of aerospace. At the same time, we must maintain progress in adapting advanced technologies that will boost efficiencies and, most importantly, improve safety and quality. I'm actually talking about robotics, additive manufacturing, artificial intelligence, and the development of digital threads across the supply chain. I was actually reflecting yesterday on how my children have been home in online school for almost an entire year. Although it's been different and a lot of adjustment time was required by all of us, I've actually been really amazed by the innovation and creativity from the teachers and the students. And just thinking about that, reminding me that our industry is no exception. I've been truly amazed at the incredible advancements suppliers are making to run their businesses and continuing to innovate for the future. There have been many stories of suppliers crossing over industries to support the needs of our medical workers over the last year. And if this last year has taught us anything, it is that we have the capacity to adapt, grow, and expand in areas that we've never dreamed. So before I close today, I just would like to leave you with a few areas that we're growing in. Boeing has set an ambitious target to address the long-term sustainability of commercial aviation by committing that its commercial airplanes are capable and certified to fly on 100% sustainable aviation fuels by 2030. Boeing and others in the industry are researching green hydrogen as one of the ways to transition to renewable energy and reduce carbon emissions. Eliminating these CO2 emissions from flying requires many solutions. And sustainable aviation fuels are widely recognized as offering the most immediate and largest potential for reducing carbon emissions over the next 20 to 30 years. So how do we at Boeing know this? Well, we've actually been working on hydrogen and fuel cell applications for over the last 15 years, including creating 4 flight demonstration programs with these applications. So Boeing will remain committed to investigating new technologies that will bring greater fuel efficiency and environmentally progressive innovations to its customers and communities around the world. In terms of suppliers, we're looking for environmental technologies and capabilities and companies who embrace diversity, inclusion, and social responsibility. I'd just like to leave you with this last thought. Boeing brought jet travel to the world. We took man to the moon, and we've been pioneering and making sustainable aviation fuels a reality. We'll continue to partner across the industry and advance all of these efforts in innovative airplane design, including the potential for green hydrogen and renewable electric propulsion to ensure future generations can fly sustainability. So I really appreciate all of your time, and I will hand it back over to you, Dave. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Kelly. Lots of good information there. Very good. Our next speaker is Michael James. Mike has an extensive background in supply chain, operations management, and strategic sourcing. He has previously served in operations leadership roles for Singapore Technologies and MRO Holdings. He's a relentless pursuer of process efficiency. Michael, over to you. Please unmute.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, I'm super excited to be a part of this discussion today. Just a little bit about my background. Again, I've spent a substantial amount of years working in operations, everywhere from the ground floor, whether it's warehousing, up through the administrative portions of it, whether it's procurement or strategic sourcing. The one thing that I've always found challenging within that process is just kind of managing the exception, and normally that is the fulfillment of goods that are not around when you need them. which leads me to the point that I want to make about COVID. The one thing about what COVID has done is expose complacency. That is, if I want to credit my boss for saying this, it's shined a really bright light into a really dark room. And it's forced us to expedite into existence things that probably should have been here or in place 10 years ago. So the one thing that at least we wanted to focus on for our customers and for ourselves was just more or less pivoting to processes that are more in tune with our customers' needs. And if you're an MRO or you're an airline, the one thing that you really focus on is returning aircraft to service. So time is extremely important. Next slide. So about complacency, the one thing that we were really, really complacent about was accepting a standard of days when it comes to raising a requirement, sourcing and purchasing goods. A lot of our valuable resources committed, in some cases around low cost expendables, et cetera. And then there was always, trying to maintain balance between cost and efficiency. Well, unfortunately, again, COVID exposed a lot of that complacency, and sadly, there's been a lot of downsizing as a result of it. So downsizing, especially when it comes to those valuable resources. With that said, the performance expectation didn't relax. The expectation was raised because we still have to deliver parts to our techs. Our aircraft still need to be returned to service so that we can load passengers or freight. So, we had, let's say some big ideas sitting on the shelf that we decided to dust off and to expedite into existence because we needed to pivot to processes that, again, were more in tune to times. And we started with the purchasing and the fulfillment process. So next slide. So we already had a project in place where we partnered with an industry leader, that is Aero Exchange, and we really wanted to focus on the fulfillment process, but we wanted to kind of invert that process. That is, take it directly from the hangar floor and back to our buyer instead of the other way around. So the system that we created was taking that demand, which could be generated from a planner or from a tech, and going directly to our suppliers. And think about it. Our suppliers are no more than an extension of the warehouse of the airline or the MRO. So, being an extension of the warehouse, the catalogs of the suppliers need to do all the talking because your catalog is no different than a bin location that is shown within the customer system. So, but there was a lot of inefficiency in that process. So, and again, those inefficiencies created a lot of costs and a lot of need to manage it. So again, a part of that solution was, reducing that time that it took to source your needs to a reputable supplier that could get your parts in the right place at the right time at the right value. Next slide. So the one thing we took a bold step in doing was launching this big idea literally in the throes of COVID. I think it was right around week 20 or let's say early March or late April that we decided to just kind of go big or go home. At the time, I was actually an operations director for MRO Holdings, and we considered a 48-hour PO TAT to be an acceptable standard. We were very proud of that, as a matter of fact. But once we actually automated that process, that is the sourcing and supplier selection, we realized that 48 hours shouldn't be the standard. As you can see from this box and whisker chart, that automation reduced our POTAT down from 46 to about 2 hours. In some cases, in most cases, about 4 hours. And this, obviously, if you're an MRO or an airline, when it comes to requisitions that are generated from non-routine work orders, that is, your planner's done the best job of situating all the goods in stock and they're there when you need them. But it's those items, again, those low-cost expendables that are not there when you need them that you need to be able to source quickly and get them back to the hangar floor. Again, we're very proud of this system. It's really enabled the 4 MROs that you see, at least here in place, to remain competitive, remain efficient, although they've gone through, again, very sad downsizing when it comes to, resources needed to continue to complete the process. Next slide. And from there, it's created actually a win-win solution for our customers and our suppliers, because we've kept the valves turning regardless if there are people sitting behind desks doing them through automation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael. Very good information, a world that a lot of us are not involved with. Our next speaker is Fred Sontag. Fred is the Vice President of Distribution Solutions and Vice President of Sales in the Americas for GA Telesis. Fred brings over 25 years of aerospace experience with an extensive understanding of the OEM and aftermarket services supply chain. Prior to joining GA Telesis, he was General Manager of Distribution with Wesco Aircraft and Director of Business Development at AAR. Fred, if you're okay, please feel free to take the floor.
All right. I just want to make it clear that Gus and I are the only two who have used our camera so far, so we should get extra credit points for this. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm Fred Sontag. First, I'm going to make an apology for my dress, which does not match what is on screen right now. I also got to experience the pleasure of connecting through Dallas yesterday with no power in my hotel, which is fantastic. 44 degrees is what it indicated when I left my room. So I don't have my suit because an airline who remain nameless, which maybe rhymes with Balcherican Airlines, lost my bags. So I get to wear a golf shirt today. So I apologize for that. I do look at least more clean and showered in the top picture, but I think you guys will, at least some of you who know me, will say this is probably more the norm than the exception. So as we get into this, I'm also excited. I want to thank the Global Partner Solutions people. This is a big deal putting these things together. So David, Brian, Trent, thanks for your patience. I have, as you can see, I'm actually traveling. I'm out of the office, and so I do believe that there is some recovery in the wings. And I kind of want to talk about what our experience is here at GA Telesis, and kind of talk about what we saw, kind of talk about what we hear, and then kind of what we think about what's going to be coming. So if you would go ahead and roll to the first slide. So you look at this fancy animations as the years tick through here. GA Telesis was having record year after record year after record year. Not a surprise with the coronavirus or COVID-19. We had a significant downturn in 2020, like everyone else here, right? And so you look at this and you go, okay, well, and I think Mike talked about it, Kelly certainly, and Gus, and there's a lot of things that come up that you have to reevaluate. So as a leader, you've got to look at, well, what are the levers I have to pull to manage my business, right? To stay afloat, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the kegger. That's nice to tell your boss how you're doing really well. And then I joined the company in late 2020. Hit it again. There we go. So -1 is really what we're looking at. So it really doesn't matter what the past 3 years were. And if this rings true to anybody either listening or participating in this call, I'd say you're not alone, right? It's kind of a what have you done for me lately business, right? So here's where we are. And so the question is, what are the levers? What is it I can do to keep the business afloat and to keep employees employed? And I think that's an often overlooked task or desire. So if you flip to the next one, we look at, well, what's the first thing you have to do? And again, apologize, it doesn't quite look like a TR, but we're in aviation, I think you can imagine, right? So the first thing you have to do is the entire marketing budget gone. Website improvements, trade shows, with maybe the exception of some relatively inexpensive in-house things, we had to really cut deep. And I think it shows. I think we're not alone. I don't think, whether trade shows are canceled and travel, I mean, how much have people traveled in the last year? It's not much. And so, we really, when I talk about, thrust, reverse, or deployed, we really had to bring those to their absolute minimum levels, again, to maintain as many people as possible. You go to the next one. So then if you're looking at, well, what are some things that maybe weren't completely shut off, but you had to really be careful, labor. So one of the first things that has to happen, obviously, is there has to be a freeze on hiring, right? If your sales are down 30, 40, 50%, hiring new people doesn't really make sense, right? So if you're in the middle of it, so we really had to throttle back or just at least maintain an idle position as best possible. And I know different companies have had different reductions in force. Having come from a company that had significant ones, we weren't much different. We had a small reduction like many others. But as you'll notice, I'm putting it in the middle, if you will, because it wasn't a primary. Labor was a secondary. If you go to the last one here. And really, now we get into stuff where, this is a supply chain call, right? And so we're all in the parts or services business for the aftermarket. And inventory and GA-Telesis, like AAR where I previously worked, and like Wesco where I previously worked, we are middlemen, right? We buy from an OEM who manufactures the product and we resell it either via a straight asset sale or a service sale to customers. Mike, you and I have had this discussion before. And so the question is, where is it, what does inventory mean? I mean, we know what it is. It sits on a shelf, it's stuff that we carry in our books and our balance sheet. But what does it mean when we're talking about maintaining a business within a COVID-19 world? As a middleman, if I don't carry inventory and I don't make the balance sheet commitment to our end customer partners, what purpose do I truly serve, right? I don't make things. I don't consume things. So really, if I'm not providing a true service when it comes to inventory, and so when we talk about being a little bit more, I think Mike talked about, we realized things that we needed to do to be better with inventory management. So these are just the quick levers, right? Because what else can you really do to scale a business when your sales drop that precipitously? It's my big word for the day, precipitously. Okay, next slide, please. So a lot of people talk a lot of things about predictive and predicting the recovery, right? That was my air quotes. So I don't think anybody knows. Do you? I certainly don't. But I think there are some common groupings of what people think. And it's important, as we kind of move into what I want to talk about, of trying to understand what they are. So if you could pop that one up here. There we go. So people talk about a V recovery, a U recovery, no recovery. But it really doesn't, in my opinion, in our company, it really doesn't matter what we think it's going to be. As leaders, we have to set a plan. We don't have the luxury of picking one, or we have to keep our business running. And so under the direction of our leader, Abdul, we have come up with a plan that I think is a little different than most. And I say that with all due respect to other companies. We have a slightly different take, and this comes from the top. So if you could start cycling through my next stuff here. So people talk about investment, and what does investment mean? It could mean a lot of things. In theory, I'm an investment. I'm a new employee. I started in December, right? We're bringing on people. We're bringing on people with our sales down, significant double digits. We're creating new businesses that we didn't have before. The distribution business that I have the title of running is a new business to us. We have a new logistics business that we've started from scratch. We have a number of things that we're investing in. It takes people, it takes inventory, it takes a lot of investment. When we talk about diversification, as other companies are having difficulty, we're looking at expanding into their businesses. As we bid deals or RFPs, or however you want to phrase it, we're looking at doing some things that we normally wouldn't have done. And I'll tell you kind of the reason why is we want to come out of this with a recovery, if you will, that has more of a shape of a hockey stick. And the hockey stick recovery is almost a straight line. In fact, if you click, I think it's the last. There we go. Where at some point, there's that point of inflection, right? We've been going kind of down and things haven't been looking fantastic, and we can sit here and negotiate. But GA-Telesis chooses to not go with the flow when it comes to a V or a U or whatever recovery. And so we're going hard. I mean, I'm on the road right now. I am traveling. Our company leaders are traveling. Our salespeople are traveling. And it's not easy because a lot of customers aren't welcoming people in. But this is the game, right? The game has changed. This is what we are right now. And so as we all are on this call and we're all just trying to make sense of what it is that we're supposed to do to aid in this recovery, I would say that it's all of our responsibility. And this is the least amount of kind of fluff that I can put at you is it is all of our job to attempt to do this hockey stick recovery. What is it you do in your role in the supply chain and any other version of aerospace that is going to help contribute to your company recovering? What is it you do that you can accelerate, that you can do differently, that you can improve a process? Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make this work. It's not just these people on this call or the leaders of our businesses. It's all of y'all that are listening to this right now. And so as we go to my kind of pseudo close here, you know, and yes, North Dakota, and we were national champions, just saying. But the real thing is we need to all be involved in this recovery. And it comes down to you. And it's not a me thing, it's all of us. And so, you know, my close for this is really, it's not, the profit and loss statements and, you know, well, what can I do to help? You already have the answer. You already know. And so I'm not going to give it to you. I don't think anybody on this panel, you know, with all due respect, is going to either. But that's certainly how we're approaching this. We're approaching this from a very aggressive standpoint. And time will tell if we're correct, right? We don't know. But anyway, I appreciate the time. Again, David, really appreciate you having me here. I'm almost as excited as Michael. He said super. I'm almost super excited because I can't be more excited than Mike. But anyway, thank you all for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Fred. Definitely gave us lots to think about. And I can tell you as a Canadian, I do appreciate your hockey references. Next up is Tom Cornicini. Tom is the Director of Supplier Management and Aircraft Tooling for United Airlines. Tom leads a global tech ops team handling supplier performance, warranty, remedy, and aircraft tooling. Tom, I will pass the floor to you.
Great, thanks, David. And kind of interesting, I'm following Fred, not to give him a hard time, but I did fly as well yesterday and got on United and got here on time with my bag. So Fred, maybe the choice of airline will be helping out next time. But thank you very much for having me. And I am also excited to be here and kind of share. I'm going to kind of break it down into two sides. I'm going to talk about United's adjustments and reaction to the crisis that occurred last year, and then a lot of what we're focused on, what we call the bounce forward or return to new, as we look to kind of rebuild the airline and in a stronger fashion even after travel starts to rebound. So one of the things we had to do right off the bat, and we led in a lot of areas, whether it was raising capital or mask mandates and other things at United, we felt really good about the way we responded to the crisis. But as you can imagine, one of the major responses we had was having to do with the adjustment in schedule. So we aggressively had to adjust schedule. And then I'm in the tech ops division. And of course, for us, that meant we had more airplanes than we needed temporarily. So if you go to the next slide, David, you know, everybody knows that the storage of aircraft was pretty big news. Just some little stats about what it means to a tech ops organization, and you can't even imagine the expansion of requirements for storage that came about from this crisis when it first occurred. So I'm going to go through a series of stats just to give everybody a kind of a framework for how quickly and aggressively we were parking airplanes to conserve cash during this time. So I'm going to, if you go to the next slide, this was around the beginning of the crisis and the pandemic, and travel was heavily impacted. In March, we saw a massive drop off that month. And you can see we started storing airplanes. This is done both at our partner supplier locations, MRO and airframe locations, as well as our own stations. So if you go through the next slide, and then you can see in April and then next, this will go through till May. You can see the fleet adjustments, and then the last one at the end of May. So we went into a significant storage hold pattern across a lot of our fleet. One of the items you'll notice on here, some of the wide body fleet wasn't stored in the same percentages. We also shifted heavily into a cargo supplier category because the cargo requirements were still very high, even though worldwide air travel was down. And we very proudly jumped into that space and kept a lot of international flights going with cargo. So throughout the year, as the schedules have been rewritten and adjusted, you can go to the next slide. You can see where we ended the year roughly with the number of airplanes, and then today on the next slide, where we are now. So we still have a significant portion of our fleet in storage. One thing United has done is retained our fleet size. We're very much aggressively positioning ourselves to be ready for the bounce forward. And we feel like the fleet that we have is the fleet that we're going to need as travel returns. If you go to the next slide. One of the things that our CEO is a fan of Winston Churchill, and one of the statements that we followed a lot last year was, if you're going through hell, keep going. And that's a lot of how we and the whole industry had to react to this challenge. Now we're really looking at what we believe is the bounce forward as we kind of focus on moving ahead and taking advantage of travel as it returns. So if you go to the next slide, we feel very, very good about where we are positioned, both with our fleet size, our hub positions, our network partners, and of course we mentioned the cargo VFR. If those that may not know that term, that's visiting friends and relatives. So that's obviously a huge portion of the travel. It's nice to see Fred traveling on business. The business travel has dropped off as well as international travel with restrictions, but we're also shifting our network quite aggressively to really capture that VFR network with the fleet that we have and the capabilities we have. So again, we know that things will bounce back. I think an earlier speaker mentioned it's just a matter of when, and nobody really can predict exactly when, but it's about being prepared and having a plan together to respond. And I'll speak to the couple things we've done both internally with our staffing as well as our fleet. So if you go to the next slide. So obviously we have a pretty strong bullish outlook for air travel as it responds. We think it'll come back strong. But as mentioned, we're also gearing up for the potential that it could come back stronger and faster than we even anticipate. So this is a lot of the activity we're doing as we look at our current fleet plan and the current capacity. And the next slide, I'll touch on just a few items that we've done. And the two areas we'll focus on are the pilots. United really had we've been working very closely with our collective bargaining union partners. We have an industry-leading pilot agreement that allowed us to retain our pilot staff and just reduce the hours, which has allowed us not to go through a very caustic furlough process for that. And the pilots are standing by and ready to basically grow back their hours as the demand grows back. And the other thing that we've looked at with our current fleet, and we feel very comfortable that you can utilize your current fleet in a much better fashion than trying to acquire new aircraft or used aircraft. So we're also looking very closely at our current fleet and making sure that that's going to be ready to go. So quick note on the next slide on the pilots, just a graphical representation. You look at what would have happened with our staff on pilots if we had to go reduce the staff to the size that the demand and the flights were flying. As you saw on the previous slide, we're at one point we're about 50% of our overall flight schedule with impact on revenue even greater than that. So, but with the current arrangement, we feel really good about being able to utilize those pilots and expand their hours as the fleet comes back. And then what might be of interest to a lot of people on this call is the next slide. So we had a slide about the kind of overall frontline staffing. So each area has significant impact and arrangements to make sure they're maintaining the staffing that we feel is required. Obviously, the PSP program from the federal government has been a big help to us, and that's allowing us to transact a lot of the maintenance that we feel we need to do now. So if you go to the next slide, as we look at our current fleet and you think about all those airplanes in storage and the maintenance activity that's required to keep the plane serviceable, there's also routine and time-controlled check activity that needs to occur. So one area that we have worked very strongly with our airframe partners is to start to bring aircraft back into checks and reduce that liability in a much more smooth pattern. Even in some cases where a plane might come out of storage and then have a check done and then go back into storage temporarily as we prepare for the future utilization of that aircraft. So it's really allowed us to look forward in a much more planned, methodical manner with how we see the industry recovering. An area that I also wanted to talk about that United has done an exceptional job on responding is working closely with our partners. We feel that supplier management is really the key to success. So much of our work is done both in internal engine shop, internal component shops, but we also have hundreds and hundreds of key partners that keep both our fleet and our components in good shape. The supplier management process, the way we see it, really factors in, just like any good relationship, it's got to be transparent. It's got to be very, very detailed. It's also, you've got to be fair to each other. You also have to hold each other accountable to their commitments. So a couple slides here, overall core fundamental supplier management philosophy on the upper left. On the right-hand side, you'll see basically we segment all of our suppliers and give them a feel for where they stand in relation to their other partners, both in terms of size and importance and revenue, and also quality measurements. So in this case, as you can see, you want to be moving into the far right and the bottom right-hand corner. That's the higher performing. And if you're in the upper left-hand corner, then we know there's work to be done. I wanted to touch on that the chart there on the left. This was something that, again, took a tremendous amount of work with our teams. The light blue is total volumes. The dark blue is the on-time percentage. And these are actual repair orders. So this is work that had to go out to companies like GA Telesis, by the way, one of our partners, and Boeing, and then parts had to come back. So you can imagine, as we had a massive drop in volumes, our partners had to adjust their capacity. They had to change staffing, in many cases change locations, consolidate. We've stayed very close with them, sharing forecasts and working together to make sure that we successfully meet the demands of the airline. And you can see our on-time percentage is actually higher now than it was pre-pandemic. So we feel really good about that. And we're talking a lot about fleet forecasts and volume forecasts. The purchase deliveries is about the same chart. So throughout this crisis, one thing that we've relied on in the next slide is we've really been an airline that's relied on each other and been working very closely as a team. I'm proud to say on the upper left-hand corner, that is actually a picture from the first COVID Pfizer vaccine. We actually were able to re-equip certification on a 777 to fly the dry ice in the full belly of the airplane. And this was November, the end of November, by the way. We took about 800,000 doses from Brussels to Chicago. This is even before they were officially certified. So that we feel really good about the creative work that's being done. You can see in the middle there, utilizing the cabin space in some cases for cargo, ultraviolet cleaning. And then on the right-hand side, we have a very good shop capacity in San Francisco for manufacturing. And we actually manufactured and designed our own hand sanitizer stands that you'll see in the United airplanes next time you fly. So really utilizing the strength of our people to pull through the crisis. And the last slide that I have before I kick it over to Jonathan, if you go to that, David, we'll close out on, looks like it might be
Trent. We'll have to click the next slide.
Oh, okay. So I'll I guess Jonathan, I think, has the final slides, and we'll talk a lot about the United customer changes and the levels of flyers that we saw and the impact to there. So appreciate the time, and I look forward to questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Tom. Very insightful. I know I speak for all on this call. I hope you're overloaded with work very soon.
Thanks.
Last but not least, we do have Jonathan Mullings. Jonathan is Senior Manager of Business Development at United Airlines as well, based out of headquarters in Chicago. Over his tenure, Jonathan has managed and negotiated some of United's largest global corporate contracts and recently led the United COVID-19 Return to Travel Task Force. Moving into 2021, Jonathan will lead the team tasked with engaging in new corporate partnerships to support the return to global business travel. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, David, and welcome to all. Really do appreciate the time today to kind of run through what is all great and new with United Airlines. Also appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel with some of our our additional partners and suppliers. We're essentially that end service that are 100% reliant on all of you. So we've all gone through 2020 together, and we're going to come through 2021 and onwards together as well. So if we next couple of minutes, what I'll do, I'll deep dive into kind of the impact on demand and what United is doing now moving forward to help not only United recover, but the industry as well. So if we move to the first slide. So this is the overview of demand across the globe. And what I'll focus your eyes is we'll look right at that USA and Canada breakout there. What essentially that is showing is when March 2020 hit, when the pandemic really took hold in the US, we saw a reduction in demand of 90%. So 90% is just a number that we've never seen before. You look back at, massive aviation, incidents at 9/11. The impact of 9/11 was not even close to what we saw with COVID-19. So right down, we maxed out at around about 92% down year over year. And as you see, you're tracking through Q2, Q3, Q4 in 2020, there wasn't really that strong bounce back. We kind of finished around 60% down year over year. When you think of the costs associated with that, it's just huge. And it really mirrored what we saw across the rest of the world as well. Some markets, if you look at Asia, excluding China, unfortunately, is still below that and functioning at 90 to 95% down year over year. But with that, when an incident like that happens and demand goes to 90% down year over year, you've got to take action. And we'll go to the next slide and talk through exactly what we did immediately. So what this slide shows is the demand is the solid gray at the bottom of the graph. So that speaks to the TSA daily volumes. So passengers transiting through our airports. And what the first goal and first strategy that United took was we've got to match our capacity with demand. So capacity is all around our schedule, the number of seats we put in the market. So you can see the light gray line right above the TSA daily volumes. That is the capacity that we put into the market. So the exec team just did a phenomenal job of meeting the demand with our capacity in the markets. The purple line above that is what our competitors match the demand with. So a significant excess in capacity is what they went with. And with excess capacity, you're going to incur excess cost, something that United obviously had to deal with, but not to the extent that our competitors did. We move to the next slide. So as well as just restructuring our network, we kind of had these three core pillars of what was going to get us through this initial COVID-19 environment. It was our financial stability, restructuring the business, and as Tom kind of touched on, is it really focused on cargo. The financial stability, just for reference, we came in to 2020 with significant cash reserves that were set aside for a major incident in the aviation industry. We thought we had that number as accurate, what was going to be possible. We quickly realized that the cost of what the COVID-19 virus was going to impact on the industry was going to far outweigh what we anticipated. So essentially, we went and secured significant financial backing, whether that's from the banks. We're also extremely grateful from the governmental support that we did get. And also as well, we're very innovative with our financing. We're actually able to do something pretty unique with our frequent flyer program, Mileage Plus, that gave us access to that extra liquidity. Now we're in a position that not only can we look at we are United being part of the industry moving forward, but it's now taking advantage of what opportunities are out there. It's pretty set. United's going to be here. What can we do to improve? Other areas are when we look at restructuring our business. Again, a lot of focus around that network, flying to locations, one, we can get to, and two, there is a demand for. The big metric that we focus on a day-to-day basis is our cash burn. So how much money are we losing a day? And just to put it in perspective, when COVID first came to the US, we were losing nearly $100 million a day. So by restructuring our business, we're able to get that down to $40 million of cash burn a day. And now we're right around that 15 to 20 million, which again, it's a large amount of money, but it really just speaks to where we've been able to come. And the goal for 2021 is get back to cash flow neutral and then get to cash flow positive by the end of 2021. So big lofty goals, but depending on what the market presents, I think it's a number that we can really get to. Cargo focus on the right-hand side there. When passengers aren't flying, we've got to generate new revenue streams. And that's what we did with cargo. We moved over 1 billion pounds of cargo, operated nearly 10,000 cargo-only missions. So it's repurposing our fleet, adjusting those as Tom spoke to. And I think one of the proudest things to be a part of United was moving that vaccine, bringing that in from Brussels into Chicago O'Hare, my hometown. So it was just fantastic to see that. And comparative to what Delta did, we were 3x on their cargo loads and 2x on what American did. So United really led the way with cargo and driving the revenue from that source. Next slide. So that was what we did initially. So now the next 12 months, what is United Airlines focusing on and relying on for success as we move forward? A lot's going to come down to the testing, and of course the vaccines. United is rolling out with our United Clean Plus product, our partnerships, the Cleveland Clinic and Clorox, and now moving into, supplying and testing at our airports. And along with that as well, massive focus on distributing the vaccine across North America. That is really when we get the testing right and we get the vaccine and the immunization, it's to a higher level. That's when we believe we are firmly going to see the return and the return of demand to airline travel. And again, re-emphasis on the positive cash flow. What unique, innovative ideas and business opportunities can we explore? It's going down the cargo route. It's going down charter route and working with the US military. We've got to be smart and we've got to do things we haven't done before. And the final column on the right-hand side, which is the focus now and moving forward into the rest of the year, is innovating for customers. I think we can all attest to, in times of crisis, it's very easy to look intrinsically and fix what we have here and look after ourselves. We reversed that lens and said, what can we do to become a better airline moving forward in 2021? And it's all around the customer, enhancing that customer experience, whether that's through our product, whether it's innovative new corporate programs. For example, we just released a leisure discount program for our corporates. And also as well, number one priority that Scott Kirby is focusing on now for the next 20, 30, 40 years is all around sustainability. We have a chance now to come back and restart travel greener, and that's what we're going to do. Next slide. So what does the outlook look like currently for us? Again, we're still down about 50% demand year over year. And as we kind of talk through is we're going to match our capacity with that demand. Leisure travel is really driving a lot of the revenue right now. So what we are doing, we are adding a multitude of leisure routes. You look at the increased capacity going out to Hawaii, adding in India and Africa as well. So really just speaking to and talking to, we're going to chase the business and we're going to, up gauge and we're going to add routes where we see that opportunity. United, of course, is a major player in the corporate business travel. And that is part of the industry that's really taken a little bit of time to come back. And a lot of that is going to be that return. A lot of it is going to be dependent on the borders opening. Obviously, we have a big network going out to Asia Pacific and also EMEA. When Europe, when those open up is when we can really start ramping up that business travel. And that's obviously a time we're thoroughly looking forward to. And obviously a lot of people on the call today are a part of that. We'll just go to the next slide. And just re-emphasizing the point around sustainability. And United is the leader in sustainability in the airline industry. And, we're committed to going 100% green, carbon neutral by 2050. And the way we do that, and I hear other panelists talking about it, it's working with other corporations, other businesses to drive this evolution of sustainability. I'll give a couple of examples. We partnered with Fulcrum Energy out of Los Angeles, which provide our biofuel that we directly funnel to LAX. We've also most recently, as last week, we partnered with Archer Company, which we've committed and invested to provide short-haul electric aircraft. So I'll just let that sink in. Short-haul electric aircraft. The future is here, and United is really driving it. So it's one thing that Scott Kirby always talks about is it's putting the money where your mouth is, essentially, right? If we're going to commit to it, let's prove it and let's deliver. Next slide. And maybe just one more click just to populate. Great. So travel solutions. So my job, as stated, is to lead the return of corporate business travel, and that includes partnering with new corporations. And we've got some great partners that already have corporate partnerships with United Airlines on the panel and also in the audience. But I would just offer up the opportunity for those corporations and attendees that are not currently partnered with United Airlines. We'd open the door and really welcome some conversation of how United Airlines can support you moving forward with your business travel. Business travel may not be live right now, but now is the time to start preparing for when we come to Q2, we come to Q3, you guys are set up for success in your business travel. I would encourage, please reach out to me via LinkedIn. Love to take a couple of minutes of your time and really set you all up for success. But that's what I had. I hope it provides some kind of overview and insight to the end user and the service that you also strongly support. Thank you very much for everyone's time today. Fantastic conference, and really do appreciate the invite for United Airlines. So with that, I'll send it back to David and on to questions.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Jonathan. As you alluded, at this point, we'll open up question period, and we'll go back to the top. So the first question would go to you, Gus, from Triumph. Will there be more consolidation of site capabilities and transfer of work between different Triumph sites?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I would say stay tuned to any kind of announcements we make on our website. It's difficult to predict the future, but we've gone through a number of them over the past 2 years, and we're on a journey to define the company a little bit better going forward. So please stay tuned to our website and any kind of announcements we'll have on that subject.
Okay. Just a kind of a general question, Gus, but I think it is a good one for you. How is the post-COVID world looking for, in general, looking for small, medium, and large-scale manufacturers?
Yeah. So I think in any kind of sourcing strategy, you want to, again, go back to the risk and resilience. There's advantages with small, medium, and large-sized companies. There's also the other aspect of the commodity strategy around that, and where small, medium, and large-sized companies may have specific intellectual property to help with our systems that we develop with the customer in mind. So I would say that we're going to continue to move forward in all three areas. There's, again, advantages with each one of those three types of companies, and we're going to continue to take those into account as we continue to develop our sourcing strategies and moving forward with new product development.
Excellent. I'd like to thank everyone, just take a minute to thank everyone for sending in questions. We've got some great questions, and we'll try to get to a bunch of them. There were probably as many, if not more, than we anticipated. So like I said before, if we don't get to them, we will try and get them answered and get them posted on our website or LinkedIn. Kelly, I've got a few questions for you. Does Boeing believe that their short-term and long-term market forecasts could change with new information from the CDC regarding the coronavirus from 2019?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I think in the short term, it's very dynamic. And we at Boeing, we recognize that we'll need to leverage and be nimble to respond to the capability and address the market needs. In the long term, it'll really depend on kind of the velocity of the recovery. And I think, some of my counterparts on the panel have discussed a lot of that. And it'll also depend on, we as consumers, how much we bring back the speed of travel. So I think that, it's just kind of looking at that short-term dynamic piece and preparing for the long term.
All right. Next question, and another great question, really. With small, medium manufacturers going cross-industry, in other words, moving out of their norm, will this affect Boeing's production rate once it starts ramping up? Have you kind of looked at some of those suppliers that have moved into different industries and the impact it may have once rates start to go up?
Yeah, I'm really thankful that somebody asked this question. It really shouldn't affect us as we've got the commitments from our supply chain and we're, communicating constantly with our suppliers. We do actually encourage our suppliers to go across industries because this actually exposes us to new innovations and efficiencies that we can include in our own industry. So, there's a lot of things out there that we can be looking at and incorporate. So, we want to make sure that our supply chains are healthy, and if going cross-industry encourages that and helps them to build a stronger business, that's important to us as well.
All right, good stuff. Thank you. Next question is directed at Michael James. Michael, what does the HMV world have prepared for the return to service of aircraft that have been parked due to the fall off of global travel?
Great question, and sorry I didn't show my face the last time, but Fred called me out, so I'm on camera now. Just a quick side note, just to show you how much the world has changed. During this live event, I've actually had to leave the office, go downstairs, take a COVID test that I need for re-entry back into the US and rejoin. I'm currently in El Salvador, working at an operations center, which also supports Aeromon. But back to the question. It's a great question. I'm not sure if I can provide an exact answer, but I can just kind of reflect on a dinner that I had with a former colleague who is the operations VP for ST Aerospace and Mobile. The one thing that let's say MROs were very, very good at pre-COVID was saying yes, yes, yes. You have airplanes, we'll take them. Just give me your airplanes, and then we'll go figure it out from a resource standpoint. Pivoting to the new reality, you just can no longer do that. So the one thing is all about right sizing, and also being prepared to say no. In some cases, we can't take the work because we no longer have the talent. We probably didn't have all the talent in the first place. But that's one thing, is about being prepared to say no, and also being prepared to right size based on the talent that you have in place today to take all of those aircraft, which will eventually return back into service. Tactically, obviously, always making sure that you're tooled up to support the aircraft. In some cases, you may be taking on new fleet types because perhaps there's been an MRO too that's no longer in existence. So you may have to start working on a 737 when you were focused on wide body prior to COVID. But again, I guess philosophically, it's just, again, more or less focusing on how to say no. And for airlines, also being more focused on listening to the MROs. It's okay to spread your aircraft out across multiple MROs instead of, situating aircraft, which in some cases suffer immensely with delays and subpar TAT.
Okay, I think you probably touched on this. The next question was, how is AMP and MRO Holdings preparing for the increased demand?
Speaking for AMP, again, our current solution, which is focused on automation, it's a scalable solution. We can definitely handle the demand electronically. The biggest challenge is more or less on the supplier management side, because again, it's just pushing our suppliers to kind of pivot to the new normal. That is having a bigger focus on letting your catalogs do the talking and letting those catalogs talk electronically. So it's, we're doing everything from just having onboarding sessions where our suppliers can focus on ways to implement more EDI solutions. We'll be putting together symposiums for the education process. There are a lot of things we're doing, at least to get our suppliers onboarded for the new now when it comes to, again, automating that sourcing and PO placement process. MRO Holdings, again, speaking because I was a previous direct employee, again, we was it was all about right sizing, and then also the retention of talent. The good thing about, operating within Latin America is you could perhaps, I mean, it's no secret that it's a low labor cost market. So holding on to that talent even during the valleys that COVID has presented to us has been an instrumental approach of making sure that you can rebound once all those aircraft come back into service. And for our U.S. MROs, again, it's all about right sizing and also cashing in on synergies that can be created from multiple operating companies.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael.
Okay.
Fred, you are the next one on the hot seat, and a couple questions for you. How much of the part sales and MRO business is coming from international customers?
It's a good question. I would say that the mix is relatively similar today than it was before. The weird thing is that China, if you look at their current airline traffic, it looks completely like 2020 never happened. But the unusual thing is that the spend is not proportionately or proportionately bigger than it was before. So I guess my simple answer is the ratios are about the same. So we've always been about maybe a 60-40 domestic versus international, and I think that mix remains the same. Again, getting caught up in which one's going to recover first, I think it's a guessing game that we're not going to play. But no, I think the 60-40 split is going to maintain, and it has been that way so far. Good question.
Cool. How do you see the diversification of divisions affecting the total business of GA Telesis with regards to vertically integrating your operations to a point, essentially trading invoices between divisions?
Okay, well, probably maybe I didn't quite clarify. When I'm talking about diversification, we're opening new businesses. And so when you think about the customer, United, great example, MRO Holdings, another great example, they're typically looking for less suppliers, right? They're looking for people who can provide a larger portfolio of parts and services. And so when you look at the larger service providers, and we all know who they are, they offer that. They have a large portfolio of products and services. And so at GA Telesis, we're not going to compete directly against other parts and services companies who provide that portfolio. We have to differentiate in the space. So back to the question, I think that this diversification isn't just creating something where I can sell to myself, right? We have an engine shop in Helsinki. Just because I'm selling there and I'm opening new businesses, yes, there's always an internal benefit, right, from a cost standpoint. But really, these are growth-based initiatives. And so I love the question. The question is really around growth. Is this for internal efficiencies or is it for growth? My answer is it is for growth. If there's a side benefit for cost, cool.
Okay, good stuff. I think we'll move over to Jonathan and Tom, and by all means, either one of you can answer this question. I think it's a good one. Are you using UV fogging, etc.? Is the transfer of the virus and other germs a priority to manage? What is your primary focus in this area?
Yeah, I'll start, Jonathan, I'll jump in. It's basically all the above. We have a significant amount of fogging that's occurring. We're also using UV, especially in areas like I saw in my picture around the flight deck and sensitive electronics. We're testing microbial coatings to avoid contact transfer as well. We've partnered with a couple of really good companies to help us manage this whole process. But yes, it is a multi-pond approach. And obviously the air quality and the air transfer in the cabin, we feel very strongly is a good mitigator of transfer as well. We run United Airlines currently is running the APU at the gate to increase the airflow in the cabin during boarding and unboarding. We feel really good about that and enhancing the safety opportunities in the cabin. So there's a lot of varieties of approaches we're taking and still growing and still learning and still evolving in this area. I'll let Jonathan add anything he wants.
Yeah, just a couple of items I'd add is the electrostatic spraying that we do on the turns on the aircraft as well. Just again, really increasing the disinfecting of the aircraft. I will share, there was a study that we partnered with the Department of Defense on in relation to what is the transmission rates on our aircraft. And when wearing a mask and all the other procedures that we take with the HEPA filters, the electrostatic spraying, the fogging, the UV, the transmission rate was 0.003%. So when we talk about has United implemented, correct policies and really just evolving the health and safety on the planes, we really have. And that's why we're very comfortable with the United Clean Plus product that we have on board our planes in the airports. So at a high level, we're ready for the return of travel. Just the holdup is a lot of it is to do with consumer confidence, and then when consumer confidence comes back, that's really the importance I highlighted of the testing and of the vaccines. When that consumer confidence is back, I think that's when we'll see the return. But absolute health and safety is an area of core focus and one that we've addressed, in an industry leading way.
Good stuff. Still staying with you, Jonathan, how much and how long will the push for virtual meetings, I know this is kind of an opinion thing, but how much will the push for virtual meetings and events continue to drag down air travel? Traditional traveling, sales, and territory representatives have homebound for the last year. Again, in your opinion, will this become the new norm, continue to slow air travel? What are you hearing?
That's the $1 million question, right, David? That we're dealing, and to be transparent and honest, business travel is going to come back. But realistically, we have to look at it taking maybe a couple of years for the return to business travel. You can do a lot of things via Microsoft Teams, as we are doing today. But there's certain things that, especially when we talk about partnerships with our partners, like we have on the call, you cannot replace face-to-face interactions. You just cannot.
No.
We firmly believe that. So we're pretty rest assured that we're kind of highlighting 2024 for that return. It's going to be just take a while. I think what we're seeing is that the larger global corporations, they're taking a little bit more time and holding themselves back for business travel. The small to mediums, that travel is coming back now. So there is some confidence there. But yeah, we're looking at 2024. I think one of the items that is very much overlooked with business travel is that people really enjoy business travel. And there's that soft aspect to it as well, that if you take that away, there's an impact when you think about recruiting, you think about morale within the company. So we're very confident that the business travel will come back. It's going to take time. But again, it's a very dynamic situation we're finding ourselves in. So we'll continue just to lead the way and be ready for you when obviously the travelers are comfortable to return.
Excellent. I happen to share your opinion. I think that it's going to take some time for the business travels, the business development people to travel, but it's all going to come around. It has to. So that really concludes our webinar for this afternoon. Again, a huge thank you to all the speakers, and very importantly, all of you for taking time out of your busy day and attending today's event. As noted earlier, the webinar will be available in its entirety on our website, and a link will be sent out soon. If you don't already, we very much appreciate your LinkedIn following, as this is a prime communication tool to keep folks up to date on future events and industry updates. And safe to say, I look forward to meeting more of you as the world begins to take off again in 2021. Thanks very much. Thanks, team.
Thank you.